Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder reaches its explosive crescendo as Hana confronts producer Kalos, who triggers the release of engineered pyroclast worms beneath the research bunker. Racing against a countdown, Rex and Gordrax orchestrate a desperate plan to collapse the facility, sacrificing their escape route, while Arioth gives his life to shield Hana from falling debris, forever proving Deathworlders are more than monsters. The wind howled across the frozen expanse, battering the reinforced walls of Outpost V-17 with relentless fury. Inside, the temperature was a carefully regulated 22 degrees Celsius, a small pocket of habitable space in the middle of the ice world, Glacia X9. Dr. Hana Reyes hunched over her console, the blue light of the holographic display casting an ethereal glow across her features as her fingers danced across the interface. "Anything interesting in the spatial anomaly readings today?" Velour asked, his golden skin shimmering under the artificial lights as he glided into the room. The Eve xenopsychologist's voice carried that distinctive, harmonious quality, as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect unison, the result of his species' hive-speak mannerisms. "Nothing particularly noteworthy," Hana replied without looking up. "Just the usual fluctuations in the outer quadrant. I'm more concerned about calibrating the long-range sensors before the next solar flare." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, revealing the small scar that ran along her jawline, a souvenir from an expedition gone wrong years ago. "You mean before the broadcast," Velour corrected, with a knowing tilt of his elongated head. "The new episode of Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder airs in 6 hours. Krinta is already setting up the viewing area." Hana finally looked up, her expression a mixture of annoyance and resignation. "We're supposed to be monitoring spatial anomalies, not wasting time on reality shows." "It's hardly a waste," Krinta interjected as she entered the room, her feathers ruffling slightly in what Hana had come to recognize as amusement. The avid biologist carried a tray of synthebrews that smelled remarkably similar to coffee. "It's the most comprehensive xenobiological field study ever broadcast. Besides, if particles could talk, they'd probably beg to be analyzed on galactic TV too." Hana accepted the offered drink with a small smile, despite herself. "That's not even remotely the same thing, and you know it." "Perhaps not," Velour conceded, taking his own mug. "But you cannot deny the cultural significance. The Deathworlder challenges have become the most unifying entertainment across the Galactic Union. Billions of viewers across thousands of species, all witnessing the triumph of adaptation and survival instinct." Hana took a sip of her drink, not bothering to argue further. She couldn't deny that the contests were fascinating from a scientific standpoint. The Deathworlder challenges pitted a single Level 1 contestant, a being with no special adaptations beyond their natural evolutionary traits, against 100 Level 100 Deathworlders, species that had evolved on the most lethal planets in known space. The contestants were dropped onto an unknown hostile world and left to survive using only their wits and whatever they could scavenge. It made for incredible television. It also made Hana's stomach turn. "The broadcast announcement is coming in," Krinta called out, her voice pitched higher with excitement. The main holoprojector in the center of the room flickered to life, displaying the gaudy logo of the Deathworlder Challenge before transitioning to the smiling face of the announcer, a genetically modified human with metallic gold skin and eyes that seemed to glow with an internal light. "Greetings, sentients of the Galactic Union. Prepare yourselves for the most extreme episode of Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder yet. This season's finale will take place on the uncharted lava swamp planet, Nova Theros, a world of searing heat, caustic acidic bogs, and unpredictable volcanic eruptions." The image shifted to sweeping footage of a hellscape, bubbling pits of molten rock, steaming pools of vibrant chemical colors, and jagged obsidian formations reaching toward a sulfurous sky. Hana felt her heart begin to race, a cold sweat breaking out across her skin despite the comfortable temperature of the room. "Nova Theros," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the announcer's enthusiastic description of the deadly environment. "Something wrong?" Velour asked, his golden eyes narrowing with concern. Hana shook her head quickly. "No, nothing, just an intense setting." But her mind was racing. Nova Theros, the same planet where her twin brother Tala had disappeared during his own Deathworlder challenge 2 seasons ago. The officials had claimed he was safe, extracted at the last moment, but he had never returned to public life. Her request for information had been met with polite deflections and eventually outright silence. On screen, the announcer was introducing this season's Level 1 contestant, Rex Orion, a self-taught survivalist from an Arctic research colony, unmodified, unenhanced, but renowned for his raw perseverance and ingenuity. The camera panned to a rugged human male with determined eyes and a quiet confidence in his stance. Hana found herself studying his face, wondering if he understood what he was truly facing. "And here are our Level 100 Deathworlders," the announcer continued with theatrical flourish. The screen filled with images of alien creatures, each more terrifying than the last. Gordrax, a massive reptiloid from a magma planet. Arioth, a sleek amphibious predator from an acid sea world. Vesri, an insectoid hive mind that secreted corrosive enzymes. Shakrel, a tiny crystalline-skinned telepath who could hide in lava fissures. Raka, an armored mammoth-like behemoth accustomed to thermal extremes. And 95 more, each with their own unique lethal adaptations. "Deployment begins in 5 hours, the announcer declared. "Place your bets now on the ultimate survival showdown." The broadcast ended, leaving the room in momentary silence. "Fascinating selection this year," Velour commented, already making notes on his personal device. "The Goran's magma immunity will be particularly advantageous in the volcanic regions, though I wonder how the Sidari crystalline structure will handle the acidic." A sudden beeping from Hana's console interrupted him. She turned back to her station, frowning at the unexpected alert. "That's strange. I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's definitely coming from Nova Theros." "Probably just pre-show preparations," Krinta suggested. "The production team always sets up remote sensors and cameras days in advance." "No, this is different." Hana's fingers flew over the controls, isolating and amplifying the signal. "It's an old-style distress beacon, and—" Her voice faltered as the pattern of the signal became clear. "It's encrypted in an archaic human frequency, one I recognize." Her heart pounded in her chest as she decoded the signal, hoping she was wrong even as she knew she wasn't. The message was fragmented, breaking up through layers of interference, but unmistakable. Her twin Tala's unique distress code. "Hana, what is it?" Velour had moved to her side, concern evident in his voice. She hesitated, debating whether to share her discovery. If she was wrong, she'd face ridicule or worse. If she was right, it could mean career repercussions for interfering with the show. "Lieutenant Valen," she called out instead, addressing the outpost's commanding officer, who had just entered the room. "I've detected an anomalous signal from the Nova Theros sector. Request permission to investigate further." Lieutenant Corey Valen's expression hardened. "Nova Theros. That's this season's Deathworlder arena. You're not getting caught up in media gossip, are you, Dr. Reyes? We have actual scientific work to focus on." "This isn't about the show," Hana insisted, though she couldn't bring herself to mention Tala. "It's a legitimate signal that deserves investigation." "Your request is denied," Valen said firmly. "Focus on the anomaly logs as scheduled. That's an order." As Valen left the room, Hana turned back to her console, her jaw set in determination. On the screen, the signal continued to pulse, weak but persistent, like a heartbeat fighting to be heard. "I know that look," Velour said quietly. What are you planning? Hana's eyes met his. I need your help. Both of you, she added, glancing at Krinta. And I need you to trust me. Nice. 5 hours later, the Galactic Union's entertainment broadcast showed a massive starship hovering above the churning atmosphere of Nova Theros. One by one, the contestants were deployed, some parachuting, others descending in hoverpods or using their own natural abilities to survive the drop. Rex Orion stood at the edge of the deployment bay, taking deep breaths as he prepared himself. Unlike the others, he carried minimal equipment, just a basic survival pack and the clothes on his back. Level 1 contestants were allowed only the simplest tools. Anything else would have to be scavenged or crafted on the planet's surface. Final contestant deployment in 30 seconds, announced an automated voice. Rex closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. When he opened them again, his gaze was steady, his purpose clear. He stepped forward and plummeted toward the hellish landscape below. The moment Rex's boots touched the scorched ground of Nova Theros, Hana's console flickered with another pulse of Tala's distress code. This time, it was stronger, as if responding to the new arrivals. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Velour, who was monitoring the signal alongside her. He nodded solemnly. "It appears to be reactive. Whatever is generating this signal, it detected the contestant's arrival." Hana had already made her decision, against regulations and direct orders. She had prepared a fast shuttle, equipping it with stealth field generators that would help them slip through the show's security perimeter. "Are we really doing this?" Krinta asked, her feathers quivering with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "I am," Hana replied firmly. "You two don't have to come. In fact, it would be better if—" "We're coming," Velour interrupted. "Whatever this is, it clearly matters to you. And we've worked together long enough to know you wouldn't suggest something this risky without good reason." Gratitude washed over Hana. "Thank you. We'll need to be careful if we're caught interfering with the broadcast. We'll be monitoring contestant data," Krinta supplied with a wink. "Purely for scientific purposes, of course." They boarded the shuttle quickly, Hana taking the pilot's position. As she initiated the launch sequence, the shuttle's AI came to life. "Destination coordinates outside sanctioned parameters," announced Oriole 9, its synthetic voice tinged with disapproval. "Request authorization for departure." "Override authorization Reyes Alpha 7, Hana responded, her fingers flying over the controls. "Ethical protocols indicate potential violation of regulations. Please confirm override is for emergency purposes only." Hana hesitated just a moment. "Confirmed. Emergency override." The AI fell silent, though Hana imagined she could feel its disapproval as the shuttle's engines hummed to life and they slipped away from Outpost V-17, heading toward the fiery world of Nova Theros. The journey was tense, all three scientists acutely aware of the risks they were taking. If they were caught interfering with the Deathworlder challenge, they could face severe penalties, loss of research privileges at minimum, criminal charges at worst. But as they approached Nova Theros and the signal grew stronger, Hana knew she had made the right choice. Something was wrong with this contest, beyond the usual ethical questions it raised. And if Tala was somehow still alive down there? "Engaging stealth field," she announced as they entered the planet's outer atmosphere. "Prepare for descent." The shuttle's cloaking technology activated, rendering them virtually invisible to the show's security systems. Even so, Hana piloted carefully, avoiding the main areas where contestants were being dropped and production drones were likely to be monitoring. They touched down on the edge of what the broadcast had labeled the Crimson Mire, an acidic bog region tinted blood red by dissolved mineral compounds. The moment they stepped outside, the brutal reality of Nova Theros hit them. Oppressive heat, air thick with toxic vapors, and the constant rumble of volcanic activity in the distance. "Environmental suits activated," Velour confirmed as they sealed their protective gear. "Atmospheric toxicity at 78%. Primary components: sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and various volcanic aerosols. Beacon signal originating from that direction, Krinta added, pointing toward a distant range of jagged mountains that belched smoke and occasional spurts of lava. The pyroclast peaks, according to the show's terrain map. Hana nodded, her expression hidden behind her helmet visor. That's our destination then, but we'll need to be careful. The contestants will be scattered all over this region. Speaking of which, Velour said, activating a small monitoring device. I've tapped into the broadcast feed. Most level 100s are beginning to employ their innate defenses. The Gordrax, is rolling in magma pools to strengthen his outer scales. The Vectari hive, Vesri, is secreting protective coatings against the acid. And the human? Hana asked, unable to keep the concern from her voice. Overwhelmed initially by the toxic vapors, Velour reported. But he's improvised a respirator from his dropped pack, heading toward what appears to be a thermal spring, likely seeking water. Hana felt a flicker of admiration for Rex's quick thinking, immediately followed by guilt. She was here for Tala, not to get emotionally invested in this season's contestants. We should move, she said firmly. The longer we stay in one place, the more likely we are to be detected. They set off across the treacherous terrain, each step requiring careful consideration. The ground itself was a hazard. Patches of seemingly solid rock could give way to bubbling acid pools or thin crusts over magma chambers. The air burned in their lungs despite their filters, and the constant roar of volcanic activity made communication difficult. They had traveled less than a kilometer when the ground beneath them began to tremble violently. Seismic activity, Krinta warned, her sensitive feet having detected the vibrations seconds before the others. Something's coming! A fissure erupted ahead of them, sending waves of acid-laden liquid cascading down the slope. They scrambled for higher ground, barely escaping the caustic flood. That wasn't natural, Velour observed, once they had reached safety. The timing and direction, it was almost like... It was deliberate, Hana finished grimly. Someone or something detected our presence and triggered that eruption. As if in confirmation, a sleek black drone appeared overhead, its cameras focusing on them with predatory intensity. Unauthorized lifeforms detected, announced a mechanical voice. Identify immediately. Hana's mind raced. They couldn't reveal their true identities or purpose, but they needed some explanation for their presence that wouldn't immediately result in their expulsion from the planet. Before she could formulate a response, the drone was struck by something small and fast, a projectile that lodged in its sensor array. The machine wobbled in the air, its systems clearly compromised. "Move!" shouted a male voice from behind a nearby rock formation. "Before it calls for backup!" They didn't hesitate, running toward the voice as the drone sparked and smoked behind them. Rounding the formation, they came face to face with Rex Orion, his features grim beneath a layer of soot and sweat. He held a crude slingshot, fashioned from elastic cording, and what appeared to be parts of his survival pack. "Who are you?" he demanded, already preparing another projectile, a small, dense nodule that Hana recognized as a lava weed seed pod. "You're not contestants, and those aren't production suits." Hana made a split-second decision. "I'm Dr. Oren Adler," she lied, using an alias she'd prepared. "These are my colleagues. We're independent researchers, studying Nova Theros." Rex's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "The Union declared this planet off-limits for research during the challenge. Try again." "We have special dispensation," Velour attempted, his high voice creating an unintentionally eerie effect through his suit speakers. "And I'm the Emperor of Old Earth," Rex retorted, raising his slingshot. "One more chance before I call the nearest level 100 to investigate my bonus prize." Hana stepped forward, removing her helmet despite the toxic air. It was a calculated risk. A few breaths wouldn't kill her, and she needed Rex to see her face, to trust her. "We're looking for someone," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "Someone who disappeared during a previous challenge. Please, we're not here to interfere with your contest." Rex studied her for a long moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Put your helmet back on before you melt your lungs," he said gruffly. "And come with me. I've found a pocket of breathable air near a thermal vent." He led them to a small cave where, remarkably, the air was indeed fresher, superheated, and forced through a natural filter of mineral deposits that neutralized many of the toxins. "It won't last," Rex explained, as they settled into the temporary sanctuary. "The vent patterns shift every few hours, but it's safe for now." "Thank you," Hana said sincerely, removing her helmet again to truly face him. "For helping us." Rex shrugged. "Don't thank me yet. I'm still deciding whether to turn you in for whatever bonus points they're offering this season." Despite his words, there was something in his expression that suggested he wouldn't actually do it. "You mentioned looking for someone," he continued after a moment. "Who?" Hana hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "My brother. He was a contestant 2 seasons ago. Officially, he was extracted safely, but he never came home." Something shifted in Rex's eyes, recognition, perhaps even empathy. "What was his name?" "Tala," Hana replied. "Tala Reyes." Rex went very still. "Reyes," he repeated slowly. "So you would be—" "Hana Reyes," she admitted. "Not Oren Adler." "I remember your brother," Rex said quietly. "He was good. Really good. Made it further than anyone expected a level 1 to go." He paused, seeming to debate with himself before continuing. "My older brother disappeared in Season 4. Same story. Safely extracted, but never came home." The cave fell silent except for the hissing of the thermal vent. "You're here for answers," Rex finally said. It wasn't a question. Hana nodded. "We intercepted a distress signal using Tala's personal code. It's coming from somewhere in the Pyroclast Peaks." "That's suicide territory," Rex warned. "Even the level 100s are avoiding the peaks until they've thinned the competition. The volcanic activity there is too unpredictable." "We have to try," Hana insisted. Rex studied her for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "I'll help you," he decided. "On one condition. You share whatever intel you have on the level 100s. I need every advantage I can get." "Deal," Hana agreed without hesitation. Velour and Krenta exchanged glances, but said nothing. They understood the stakes had just changed dramatically. "We should move soon," Rex said, checking a crude timepiece he'd fashioned from parts of his pack. "The vent will shift in about 20 minutes, and we don't want to be here when the toxic gases return." As they prepared to leave, a sudden transmission broke through on their communication devices. A fragment of the live broadcast, showing the Aquir contestant, Arioth, using acid-rich pools to dissolve thorny barriers in his path. The sleek amphibious predator moved with lethal grace, his scales shimmering with an oily iridescence that repelled the caustic environment. "The bastards are thriving," Rex muttered, watching the footage with a mixture of admiration and resentment. "Built for this hell." "Not all of them," Velour pointed out. "Look." The broadcast shifted to show smaller contestants struggling, a group of insectoid beings whose exoskeletons were beginning to corrode in the acidic atmosphere. A floating gas bag creature, whose buoyancy sacs were rupturing in the intense heat. "The first 12 hours are always the most lethal," Krenta commented. "Even for level 100s, sudden immersion in an extreme environment requires adaptation time." "Which is why we need to move," Rex insisted, gathering his makeshift tools. While they're still adjusting and distracted with each other, they left the cave, venturing deeper into the hostile landscape of Nova Theros. Rex led the way, his movements calculated and efficient. Despite his status as a mere level 1 human, it was clear he had trained extensively for this challenge. How long have you been preparing? Hana asked, as they navigated around a bubbling pit of acid. My whole life, Rex replied without looking back. After my brother vanished, I dedicated everything to understanding death worlds. I've trained in simulation chambers, studied every past season, conditioned my body to withstand extreme environments. He paused, carefully testing the ground ahead with a metal rod before proceeding. I need to know what happened to him. The only way was to get into the game myself. Hana felt a surge of kinship with this determined man. They were both driven by the same desperate need for answers, for closure. Their path took them toward a forest of petrified trees draped in molten resin. The lava wood forest, as the broadcast had named it, was eerily beautiful. Twisted trunks of stone with glowing amber sap that dripped continuously, hardening into bizarre sculptures as it cooled. Stay clear of the resin, Rex warned. It burns through environmental suits in seconds. As if to emphasize his point, a distant scream echoed through the forest. A contestant who had clearly discovered this property the hard way. The forest offers the most direct route to the pyroclast peaks, Velour observed, consulting their terrain map. But also the most dangerous. Everything on this planet is dangerous, Rex replied grimly. At least the forest provides some cover from the production drones. They pushed deeper into the petrified woods, the air growing thicker with sulfurous fumes. Occasionally, the ground would tremble beneath their feet, reminders of the volatile nature of Nova Tharos. Without warning, the air around them ignited, a firestorm erupting as pockets of flammable gas combusted in a chain reaction. They scattered for cover, the heat so intense that Hana could feel it through her protective suit. This way! Rex shouted, gesturing toward a depression in the ground that offered minimal shelter. They huddled together as the flames raged overhead, turning the forest into an inferno. The suits won't withstand this heat for long, Krinta warned, her environmental readings flashing critical warnings. Rex was already moving, scraping glowing ash ferns from the ground around them. These spores are heat-resistant, he explained rapidly, crushing the ferns and extracting a fibrous material. Cover your external filters with them. It'll buy us some time. They worked quickly, fashioning crude protective masks for their suits' ventilation systems. The spores created a temporary barrier against the worst of the heat, though Hana could still feel her skin beginning to blister beneath her suit. Just as it seemed they might actually be cooked alive, the firestorm passed, leaving behind a landscape of smoldering embers and glowing rock. That was no natural phenomenon, Velour said, his voice unnaturally calm. The pattern of ignition, the propagation rate, it was controlled. The producers, Hana realized with growing horror. They're manipulating the environment to increase the drama. Rex's expression hardened. They do it every season. Weather control, tectonic adjustments, atmospheric ignition, whatever creates the best show. His voice was bitter. It's all part of the game. A sleek black shape passed overhead. Another production drone, more advanced than the one Rex had disabled earlier. This one was larger, with multiple sensor arrays and what appeared to be weapon systems mounted beneath its carapace. Predator class, Rex whispered, pulling them beneath the cover of a half-collapsed lava-wood trunk. Don't move! The drone hovered, its sensors sweeping the area in methodical patterns. A mechanical voice emanated from its speakers. Contestant Dr. Adler out of bounds. Stand down. Hana froze. Somehow, despite Rex's intervention, they had been identified. They're scanning for life signs, Velour murmured. Our environmental suits must have registered. Rex was already moving, crawling toward a pyroclast hidden satellite uplink, part of the show's infrastructure for monitoring contestants. Cover me, he whispered, while Hana and the others remained motionless, drawing the drone's attention. Rex reached the uplink and began manipulating its controls with surprising expertise. Moments later, the drone's movements became erratic, its sensors clearly confused by conflicting data. What did you do? Hana asked as Rex rejoined them. Looped its identification protocols, he explained tersely. It won't hold for long, but... The drone suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine, then exploded in a small, anti-detection burst, designed to self-destruct without causing a spectacle that would be visible on the broadcast. That'll happen, Rex finished with grim satisfaction. Won't that alert others to our presence? Krinta asked, alarmed. Yes, Rex confirmed. Which is why we need to move. Now. They pushed on through the smoldering forest, moving as quickly as caution would allow. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous, with patches of ground giving way beneath their feet and sudden jets of steam erupting without warning. As they reached the far edge of the lava-wood forest, Hana's communication device crackled to life, intercepting a transmission between contestants. New targets identified in Sector 7, came the multi-tone voice of Vesri, the insectoid hive mind. Unauthorized entrance. Production marks them as bonus objectives. Value, rumbled the deep bass of Gordrax, the reptiloid magma dweller. High, priority directive from showrunners. Converging on position, added a third voice, the mammoth-like Rakka. Rex swore under his breath. They've put a bounty on us. The level 100s will be hunting us now, in addition to each other. Why would they do that? Hana demanded, though she already suspected the answer. Ratings, Rex replied flatly. Nothing spikes viewership like unexpected developments. 4 mysterious intruders being hunted by Deathworlders? That's premium entertainment. They found temporary shelter beneath a massive obsidian boulder, its surface still warm from recent volcanic activity, but cool enough to touch. For the first time since landing on Nova Theros, they had a moment to truly rest. It was there, in that brief respite, that Hana finally broke down. The stress, the fear, the guilt, it all came crashing down at once. I should have known something was wrong, she whispered, tears cutting clean tracks through the ash on her face. When Tala never came home, I should have pushed harder for answers. Instead, I buried myself in work, accepted their lies about him being safely extracted but choosing privacy. Rex sat beside her, his own face a mask of contained emotion. They're good at covering their tracks, he said quietly. After my brother disappeared, I tried everything, legal inquiries, media pressure, even threatened to expose them. They buried me in paperwork and legal threats until I realized the only way to find the truth was from the inside. You think the show is rigged? Valor asked, his golden eyes reflecting the distant glow of lava flows. I think it's worse than that, Rex replied. I think sometimes contestants discover things they're not supposed to see. And when that happens... He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear. What could be so important that they'd risk everything to cover it up? Krinta wondered aloud. That's what we're going to find out, Hana said, her resolve hardening through her tears. For Tala, for your brother, for anyone else they've silenced. They rested for another hour, taking turns keeping watch, before continuing their journey toward the pyroclast peaks. The mountains loomed closer now, their jagged silhouettes stark against the sulphurous sky. Occasionally, one would belch a column of fire and ash, sending tremors through the ground. The signal from Tala's beacon grew stronger as they approached, confirming they were on the right track. But so did the danger. Twice they had to hide from patrolling level 100 contestants, once from a floating crystalline being that Hana identified as Shakrel, the Sidari telepath, and once from a pack of insectoid hunters from Vesri's hive. They're coordinating the search, Rex observed after the second near encounter. Sharing information, dividing the terrain. That's unusual. Level 100s rarely cooperate this extensively. The bounty must be significant, Valor suggested. Or the directive comes from high enough that they dare not disobey, Hana added darkly. As they began the ascent up the lower slopes of the pyroclast peaks, the ground beneath them grew increasingly unstable. Rivers of molten rock cascaded unpredictably down the mountainside, forcing them to change course multiple times. The air became almost unbreathable, even through their filtered masks, heavy with ash and toxic gases. They were navigating a particularly treacherous ridge when they heard it, a low, melodic hum that seemed to resonate through the rock itself. "What is that?" Krinta asked, her feathers vibrating in response to the strange frequency. Velour's eyes widened. "It's a Sidari psychic echo. Shkrel is scanning for us." "Down!" Rex commanded, pulling them into the shelter of a lava tube just as a small, crystalline figure floated into view above them. Shkrel hovered silently, its faceted body refracting the light from the lava flows below. For a tense moment, Hana was certain they had been discovered. Then, to her astonishment, the Sidari deliberately turned away, as if deliberately ignoring their hiding place. "It knows we're here," Velour whispered, "but it's choosing not to reveal us." "Why would it do that?" Hana wondered. As if in answer, a faint, telepathic impression brushed against their minds. Not words exactly, but a sense of recognition, of shared purpose, and beneath that, a directive. Follow. Safety. Truth. Shkrel drifted away, moving deliberately slowly, its path taking it up the mountainside toward a narrow fissure in the rock. "It wants us to follow," Hana realized. "It could be a trap," Krinta warned. "I don't think so," Rex said slowly. "Sidari are telepaths. They can sense intent, emotion. If Shkrel picked up on why we're here—" "We follow," Hana decided, already moving to emerge from their hiding place. "But carefully." They trailed the crystalline being at a distance, wary of ambush, but increasingly convinced that Shkrel was indeed leading them deliberately. The path it chose avoided the worst of the volcanic activity, winding through relatively stable passages up the mountainside. As they climbed higher, they encountered another unexpected ally, Arioth, the sleek amphibious predator from the Acid Sea world. The Aquir was waiting for them at a juncture where 3 lava tubes converged, his iridescent scales shifting colors in the dim light. "You are the outsiders," he stated, his voice a liquid ripple of sound. It wasn't a question. "We are," Hana confirmed, tense and ready to flee. Arioth studied them with multifaceted eyes. "I saw you help the human," he said, nodding toward Rex. "No contestant would do this. Therefore, you are not what you appear to be." He paused, head tilting curiously. "You seek something in the peaks." "Someone," Hana corrected cautiously. "Ah." Arioth's gill slits fluttered in what might have been understanding. "The lost one. The one who came before." He gestured upward, toward the summit. "I have sensed echoes, old pain, trapped knowledge." "You can lead us to him?" Hana asked, hope surging. "Perhaps, but there is danger. The Great Ones hunt you, Gordrax, Vesri, Rakka. They believe you are prize targets." "Why are you helping us?" Rex demanded, suspicious despite their apparent good fortune. Arioth's scales rippled with a pattern that Velour later explained was the Aquir equivalent of a shrug. "This contest, it is not what it once was. Something changed. The rules bend. The producers whisper of special considerations and enhanced challenges. I seek truth as well." With both Shkrel and Arioth now guiding them, they made faster progress up the mountain. The Sidari's telepathic abilities helped them avoid patrols and dangerous volcanic activity, while Arioth's knowledge of fluid dynamics, a natural gift of his species, allowed them to predict and navigate lava flows safely. They reached the upper slopes of the peaks as Nova Theros's primary sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hellish landscape. There, partially engulfed by a recent magma flow, they discovered a structure that clearly didn't belong on this primeval world, a research bunker of advanced design, its outer walls scorched but still intact. "Tala's last transmission came from here," Hana said, checking the signal strength on her device. It was now pulsing steadily, no longer fragmented or weak. This isn't a contestant shelter, Rex observed, examining the structure. This is Union scientific grade. What's it doing in the middle of a Deathworlder arena? They approached cautiously, aware that if the bunker contained answers, it might also contain traps. The entrance was sealed, but Arioth discovered a maintenance access panel that allowed them to bypass the main door. Inside, the bunker was in disarray, equipment overturned, data screens shattered, signs of a hasty evacuation or perhaps a struggle. But most disturbing was the central chamber, where a sophisticated AI terminal still functioned, its holographic display projecting a continuous loop of warning messages. What is all this? Krynta wondered, examining the scattered research materials. Geological surveys, biological samples, containment protocols. They were studying something, Velour concluded, piecing together fragments of data from damaged screens. Something indigenous to Nova Theros, something they called pyroclast worms. Here, Hana called out, her voice tight with emotion. She had found a personal console, and on it, a holotape labeled with Tala's signature. With trembling fingers, she activated the recording. Her brother's face appeared, gaunt, exhausted, but alive. The timestamp indicated the recording was made just 3 months ago. To whoever finds this, Tala began, his voice urgent. What you're about to hear will sound paranoid, perhaps even delusional, but I swear on my life it's true. The Deathworlder challenge isn't just a contest. It's a cover for something much darker. He glanced nervously over his shoulder before continuing. Nova Theros wasn't chosen randomly for this season's arena. The producers, specifically executive producer Saren Kalos, selected it because of what's hidden beneath its surface. Ancient bioforms. What the research team called pyroclast worms. Living creatures that can survive in molten rock, that feed on thermal energy. Tala's image flickered as he manipulated controls off-screen. The Union Science Division discovered them years ago, but kept their existence classified. The potential applications were too valuable. Organisms that could potentially power entire cities, that could terraform volcanic worlds. His expression darkened. But Kalos saw a different potential. Entertainment value. They're planning a sabotage twist for the Nova Theros episode. They're going to unleash the pyroclast worms on the contestants. Not natural ones, but engineered versions. Level 100 grade biothreats designed to boost ratings. The recording glitched, static, obscuring Tala's face momentarily. I was brought here as a special consultant after my season. They said they wanted my expertise on survival strategies. Instead, I discovered their real plans. When I threatened to expose them, the holotape abruptly cut off, leaving them in stunned silence. They're using the contest to test bioweapons, Rex said, finally, his voice hollow with horror and rage. Worse, Velour added, having accessed more of the terminal's data. They're planning to release them during the final hours of the broadcast. Maximum viewership, maximum drama. We need to warn the contestants, Hana insisted. We need to shut this down. It's too late for warnings, came a new voice from the bunker's entrance. They turned to find Gordrax filling the doorway, his massive reptilian form blocking any escape. Behind him stood Vesri, multiple insectoid limbs poised to attack, and Raka, the mammoth-like behemoth barely fitting through the corridor. The bonus hunt ends here, Gordrax rumbled, magma dripping from his scales to sizzle on the metal floor. Arioth moved to stand between them and the new arrivals, his posture shifting to defensive mode. Shakrel hovered near the ceiling, its crystalline body pulsing with telepathic energy. Wait, Hana called out, stepping forward despite Rex's attempt to hold her back. You need to see this. All of you. She reactivated Tala's holotape, letting it play through once more. As the level 100s watched, their aggressive postures gradually relaxed, replaced by confusion and then growing alarm. Engineered worms? Vesri's multi-toned voice vibrated with concern. To be used against us? That explains the restricted zones, Raka rumbled. The areas we were told were off-limits due to extreme conditions. They're holding pens, Rex realized. Containment areas for the worms. Before they could process this revelation further, the AI terminal suddenly activated fully, its main screen displaying the face of a woman with cold, calculating eyes. "Well, this is an unexpected development," said executive producer Seren Kalos, her image smiling thinly at them. "Though perhaps not entirely surprising. You Reyes twins always were trouble." "Kalos," Hana breathed, recognizing the showrunner from media appearances. "You were monitoring us all along." "Of course," Kalos replied with a dismissive wave. "Did you think those drones were just for show? The moment you landed on Nova Theros, you became part of the broadcast, whether you knew it or not." Her smile widened, becoming predatory. "In fact, you've given us our highest ratings in 3 seasons. Rogue Scientists Uncover Conspiracy is performing exceptionally well with viewers across 17 sectors." "Where is my brother?" Hana demanded, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Kalos's expression shifted to mock sympathy. Poor Tala, so concerned about ethics, about responsibility. He was marked for deletion the moment he accessed restricted files. Such a shame. He would have made an excellent recurring character. "You murdered him," Hana accused, rage building inside her. "Murdered is such an ugly word," Kalos chided. "Let's say he was written out of the script. For the good of the show." Gordrax stepped forward, his massive form radiating heat. "You intended to use these worms against us? Without warning? Without consent?" "Consent?" Kalos laughed. "You signed away your rights the moment you joined the challenge. Section 47, Paragraph 9 of your contracts. Producers reserve the right to introduce additional environmental and biological hazards at their discretion." Her smile never wavered. "Besides, you're level 100s, adapted to survive the most extreme conditions in known space. Surely a few engineered creatures wouldn't pose too much of a challenge." As she spoke, a secondary system activated, a containment protocol that began opening sealed chambers beneath the bunker. Warning lights flashed, and a mechanical voice announced, "Pyroclast worm release sequence initiated. Containment fields disengaging in T-5 minutes." "You're insane," Rex said in disbelief. "You'll kill everyone on this planet." "Not everyone," Kalos corrected. "Just enough to create a truly memorable finale. The survivors will be celebrated across the galaxy. Think of the merchandising opportunities." Hana lunged for the terminal, searching for a way to abort the release sequence. "We have to stop this." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Kalos informed her calmly. "The sequence is hardwired. Once initiated, it cannot be aborted except from the main production ship, which, incidentally, will be leaving orbit shortly. Safety protocols and all that." The ground beneath the bunker trembled violently, more than the usual volcanic activity. From somewhere below came a sound that chilled Hana's blood, a high, keening wail that seemed to resonate through the very rock. "They're waking up," Arioth said quietly, his scales shifting to a deeper, warning hue. "I can feel them moving beneath us." 4 minutes to containment breach," announced the automated system. Rex was already in motion, examining the bunker's structural supports with the eye of someone who had studied engineering as well as survival. "There's a way to stop this," he said urgently. "If we can trigger a controlled collapse of this section, we can seal the chambers before the worms escape. That would require explosives," Raka pointed out, "which we don't have." "We have something better," Rex replied, gesturing to Gordrax. "We have a walking volcano." Understanding dawned in the reptiloid's eyes. "You want me to melt the support beams?" "Precisely. If you can generate enough heat to liquefy those main struts." Rex pointed to the primary support columns. "The entire structure will collapse into the chambers below, The magma flow from the mountain will do the rest, sealing everything under tons of rock. What about the exit route? Vesri asked, compound eyes swiveling to assess the bunker's layout. Once the collapse begins, we'll have very little time to escape. There's an emergency shaft here, Krinta indicated, having discovered a maintenance diagram. It leads to the surface about 200 meters north. If we can reach it before the main collapse. 3 minutes to containment breach. The system updated ominously. They worked with frantic urgency. Gordrax positioning himself near the critical support structures. Vesri and Raka clearing a path to the emergency exit. Arioth and Shakrel using their respective abilities to monitor the worm's movements below. Hana remained at the terminal, extracting every piece of data she could find about Tala's fate, about the worm project, about Kalos's plans. If they survived this, she was determined to have enough evidence to bring the entire Deathworlder franchise crashing down. 2 minutes to containment breach. Almost there, Rex called out, finalizing the collapse sequence with Gordrax. Once he starts, we'll have approximately 40 seconds to reach the shaft. Ready when you are, Vesri confirmed from the corridor, leading to their escape route. Rex hesitated, looking back at the terminal where Hana was still working. Hana, we need to go, now. She nodded, downloading the last of the critical files onto a portable drive. Done. 1 minute to containment breach. Begin, Rex ordered Gordrax. The massive reptiloid planted his clawed feet firmly, then unleashed his species' unique ability, channeling magma from his very core. His scales glowed white-hot as he pressed his hands against the main support beam, which immediately began to warp and melt under the intense heat. Move, Rex shouted, grabbing Hana's arm and pulling her toward the exit. They ran as the bunker began to groan and shift around them, support structures failing in a cascade of collapsing metal and stone. Behind them, the keening of the worms grew louder, more frenzied, as if they sensed their imminent freedom and its equally imminent denial. 30 seconds to containment breach. They reached the emergency shaft, a narrow tube barely wide enough for Raka's bulk, and began to climb the emergency ladder within. Gordrax remained behind, longer than the others, ensuring the critical supports were completely compromised. 15 seconds to containment breach. Gordrax, now! Rex shouted down the shaft. The reptiloid finally abandoned his post, climbing rapidly despite his massive size. As he ascended, the bunker gave one final, catastrophic groan before imploding. The shockwave raced up the shaft behind them, carrying superheated air and debris. Containment breach in progress. Warning, biocontainment failure. They emerged onto the surface, just as the ground beneath them collapsed inward, creating a massive sinkhole that rapidly filled with flowing magma from the mountain's natural vents. The worm's wailing was abruptly cut off, replaced by the roar of volcanic activity reclaiming the area. For a moment, they stood in stunned silence, watching as nature itself sealed away the threat. Then, the reality of their situation sank in. We still need to get off this planet, Hana said, clutching the data drive that contained their evidence. The production ship is already leaving, Valor pointed out, gesturing to the sky where a distant light was accelerating toward space. Kalos is running, Rex growled. She knows what we've discovered. There are extraction points for contestants, Arioth offered. Emergency teleportation terminals scattered around the arena. They'll be guarded, Vesri warned, and likely programmed to recognize only official contestants. The ground shook beneath them again, but this time, it wasn't the result of their actions or the worms. The entire mountain range seemed to be waking up, as if the disruption they had caused had triggered something larger. The planet's volcanic network is destabilizing, Raka realized, his species' natural sensitivity to seismic activity, allowing him to feel what the others could not yet perceive. The worm containment must have been integrated with natural pressure release valves. Without it, Nova Theros is going to blow, Rex finished grimly. How long? Hours at most, Raka estimated. "We need to evacuate. All of us." What followed was a desperate race against time. With the uneasy alliance between Level 1 and Level 100 contestants still holding, they descended the mountain as quickly as caution would allow. The volcanic activity was intensifying by the minute, new fissures opening in the ground, geysers of lava erupting unpredictably, toxic gases venting in choking clouds. They were navigating a particularly treacherous section of the descent when disaster struck. A massive explosion rocked the mountainside, sending a cascade of superheated rocks down upon them. There was no time to find cover, nowhere to hide from the deadly bombardment. In that moment of crisis, Arioth made a decision that would forever change Hana's understanding of the beings labeled as Deathworlders. The Aquir leapt upward, his flexible body expanding to form a living shield above Hana as the rocks came crashing down. The impact was devastating. Even with his naturally resilient physiology, Arioth could not withstand the full force of the rockfall. He collapsed, his iridescent scales dulling as life ebbed from his shattered body. Hana knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" Arioth's multifaceted eyes flickered faintly. "Because you speak truth. Because your kind sees us as monsters, but we are not." His gill slits fluttered one last time. "Show them we can be more." With those words, the light faded from his eyes. Arioth, Level 100 Deathworlder, contestant number 17, was gone, sacrificed not for victory or survival, but for a cause greater than the contest. The remaining Level 100s, Gordrax, Vesri, Raka, and Shakrel, stood in stunned silence. For beings accustomed to the brutal calculus of survival, such selfless sacrifice was almost incomprehensible. "We must honor his choice," Vesri finally said, the hive mind's multi-toned voice unusually subdued, "by ensuring it was not in vain." They fashioned a stretcher for Hana, who had been injured despite Arioth's protection. Raka sacrificed a section of his protective hide to create the makeshift carrier, while Vesri provided a neurotoxin antidote when Hana began to inhale too much sulfur smoke. The unlikely alliance pressed on, making their way toward the nearest extraction point, a precursor teleportation terminal that had been repurposed for the contest. As they traveled, they encountered other contestants fleeing the escalating disaster. Some joined their group, drawn by the unexpected cooperation between species normally at odds. Others continued alone, still fixated on winning despite the collapsing environment. They reached the teleportation terminal as Nova Theros entered its final death throes. The entire planet seemed to be tearing itself apart, continents shifting, oceans of lava surging over their banks, the very air becoming too toxic to breathe even through filters. The terminal itself was damaged, but still functional, its ancient technology remarkably resilient. Rex, drawing on knowledge gleaned from years of studying previous contests, began working to bypass its security protocols. "It's locked to contestant signatures," he explained, fingers flying over the alien interface. "But I think I can override it using the emergency evacuation code." "Hurry," Krinta urged, monitoring the environmental readings on her device. "The atmospheric pressure is approaching critical levels. When it breaks..." Rex nodded grimly, redoubling his efforts. Minutes stretched into an eternity as he worked, the ground beneath them bucking and heaving with increasing violence. Finally, the terminal hummed to life, its transfer platform glowing with energy. "Got it!" Rex exclaimed. "It's set to transport to the production ship's emergency bay. We can only go in small groups. Who's first?" "Hana and her team," Gordrax rumbled, surprising everyone. "They have the evidence. They must survive to reveal the truth." The others nodded in agreement. Whatever competition had existed between them was now secondary to ensuring justice for what had been done to them all. Hana protested weakly from her stretcher. "We go together or not at all." "Not possible," Rex countered. "The terminal can only transport 3 at a time, and it needs recalibration between jumps. You 3 go first." He indicated Hana, Velour, and Krinta. "I'll follow with the next group." "I'm not leaving you," Hana insisted, struggling to sit up despite her injuries. Rex knelt beside her, his expression softening. "You have to. For Tala. For my brother. For Arioth. Someone needs to make sure this evidence reaches the right people." Before she could argue further, he activated the teleportation sequence. The last thing Hana saw before the energy field enveloped her was Rex's determined face, silhouetted against the apocalyptic landscape of a dying world. The teleportation was disorienting, a sensation of being unmade and remade in the span of a heartbeat. When Hana's vision cleared, she found herself in a sterile evacuation chamber, aboard what could only be the production ship. Velour and Krinta materialized beside her, equally disoriented but alive. Medical drones immediately converged on them, administering treatment for their injuries and exposure to Nova Theros' toxic environment. Through the chamber's viewport, Hana could see the planet below, a world in its death throes, vast sections of its surface now molten and fluid. "Rex," she whispered, searching for any sign that the teleportation terminal had activated again, that more survivors were arriving. But the terminal remained dark. Whatever was happening on Nova Theros, the connection had been lost. A security team arrived, clearly startled to find unauthorized personnel in the evacuation chamber. They were even more surprised when Hana, despite her weakened condition, pulled rank. "I am Dr. Hana Reyes, xenobiologist, Union Science Division," she declared, displaying her credentials. "And I am commandeering this communication system under Emergency Protocol 7. The security team hesitated, then stepped aside. They recognized the authority of the protocol. It superseded all but the most dire military emergencies. Hana accessed the ship's main communication array, connecting directly to the Galactic Union's emergency broadcast system. This wasn't just a local feed. It would reach every planet, every station, every outpost across Union space. "My name is Dr. Hana Reyes," she began. Her face and voice transmitted to billions of viewers. "What I am about to tell you will sound incredible, perhaps even impossible. But I have evidence. Evidence of crimes committed in the name of entertainment, of lives sacrificed for ratings, of a conspiracy that reaches to the highest levels of the Deathworlder Challenge franchise." She uploaded the data from Tala's drive, allowing the raw information to flow across the network, impossible to censor or contain. Executive producer Seren Kalos and others have manipulated contests, endangered contestants, and covered up deaths. They engineered bioweapons, the pyroclast worms, and planned to release them during today's broadcast for enhanced drama. The ship shuddered as Nova Theros finally succumbed to its internal pressures, the planet rupturing in a spectacular explosion that sent debris hurtling through space. The production ship's emergency systems engaged, accelerating them away from the blast zone. The contestants on Nova Theros sacrificed themselves to prevent a catastrophe, not just for themselves, but for countless future worlds where these engineered creatures might have been deployed. Among them was Arioth, an Aquir who gave his life to save mine. Her voice broke slightly. "He wanted you to know that Deathworlders are not monsters. They are people, with the same capacity for heroism, for sacrifice, for nobility as any of us." The broadcast continued, Hana methodically presenting the evidence they had gathered. Logs from the bunker, Tala's testimony, data on the Worm Project, records of previous contestants who had vanished after asking too many questions. By the time she finished, the reaction was sweeping across the galaxy. Viewers revolted, advertisers withdrew, Union regulators, spurred by public outrage, launched immediate investigations. The Deathworlder challenge was suspended indefinitely, its producers and executives facing criminal charges. For Hana, however, the victory felt hollow. She had exposed the truth. Yes, she had ensured that Arioth's sacrifice would not be forgotten. But Tala was still missing. And Rex. Dr. Reyes, a communications officer, approached hesitantly. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from Nova Theros." Hana's heart leapt. "That's impossible. The planet is gone." "Not entirely," the officer explained. "The core remains, and there appears to be a bunker of some kind, shielded. We're patching it through now." The screen flickered, then stabilized to show Rex's face, battered, exhausted, but unmistakably alive. "Hana," he said, his voice distorted by static. "Can you hear me?" "Rex," she exclaimed, moving closer to the screen. "You're alive! How?" "The teleportation terminal led to an emergency bunker," he explained, the connection wavering. "Deep beneath the surface. Precursor technology. Far more advanced than we realized. It's shielded against, well, apparently against planetary destruction." "Who else is with you?" Hana asked, hardly daring to hope. Rex's face broke into a weary smile. He stepped aside, revealing another figure behind him. Thinner, older, but with the same eyes as Hana. "Hello, sister," said Tala Reyes. "Took you long enough." Tears streamed down Hana's face. "Tala, you're alive." "Barely," he admitted. "Been hiding in this bunker for months. It was built by a precursor civilization, designed to withstand cataclysmic events. I found it when I was investigating the Worm project." "We'll send a rescue ship immediately," Hana promised. "Just hold on." "No rush," Rex said with a hint of his old determination. "This bunker has supplies for years. And—" He hesitated, glancing at Tala, who nodded encouragingly. "We're not alone down here. There are others. Previous contestants who discovered too much. Your brother has been helping them survive, waiting for a chance to get the truth out." "Which you did," Tala added, pride evident in his voice despite the poor connection. "I saw your broadcast. Hana, the whole Union saw it. Kalos and her cronies can't hide anymore." The transmission began to break up, the connection faltering. "We're losing you," Hana said urgently. "But we'll find you. I promise." The last thing she heard before the screen went dark was Rex's voice. "We know you will. We'll be waiting." In the days that followed, the full impact of Hana's revelations rippled across the Galactic Union. The Deathworlder challenge was officially canceled mid-season. Seren Kalos and several other executives were arrested on charges ranging from fraud to bioterrorism. Union investigation teams descended on every previous contest world, searching for evidence of other cover-ups, other victims. A rescue mission was launched to the remains of Nova Theros, where the precursor bunker had indeed survived. Rex, Tala, and 27 other missing contestants were recovered, each with their own story of discovery and forced disappearance. Back at Outpost V-17, Hana, Valor, and Krinta resumed their scientific work, this time with a renewed focus on their original mission of studying spatial anomalies. The outpost became a symbol of ethical research, of truth prevailing over sensationalism. The surviving Level 100 contestants, Gordrax, Vesri, Raka, Shakrel, and others who had escaped Nova Theros, became unexpected advocates for reform. They worked with Hana to draft regulations for ethical survival contests that would showcase adaptability and skill without exploiting participants or endangering lives. Most meaningful to Hana, however, was a small ceremony held on a newly terraformed moon orbiting Nova Theros' star. There, she established a memorial grove for Arioth and the others who had sacrificed themselves. as she placed a single obsidian blossom, a synthetic recreation of a flower that had evolved on his homeworld. Hana made a silent vow that their sacrifice would never be reduced to mere footage, never be forgotten in the flow of galactic entertainment. "An enemy's sacrifice can become a catalyst for peace," she whispered, echoing words that Arioth had shared during their brief alliance. Behind her, Rex and Tala waited respectfully, both still recovering from their ordeal, but determined to carry forward the mission that had nearly cost them their lives. Together, the three of them would ensure that the lessons of Nova Theros would ripple through the Galactic Union for generations to come. As they departed the memorial, a holonews segment played on the shuttle's communication system. It showed viewers across the galaxy rallying for contestant rights, inspired by Hana's revelations and Rex's bravery. What had begun as a quest for personal answers had evolved into a movement for change. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, on worlds where the gravity crushed, where the air burned, where the oceans dissolved flesh, Level 100 Deathworlders watched with growing hope. For the first time, they were being seen not as monsters or entertainment, but as people, diverse, complex, capable of nobility and sacrifice. It was a small step, perhaps, but in a galaxy where entertainment had trumped ethics for too long, it was a beginning.